Hi, my name is Zoe. I'm a baker at Three Babes Bakeshop, and today I'm going to show you how we make our classic apple pie. Our apple pie is definitely one of our most popular pies. I like it because I think it has a very good crust to filling ratio. At Three Babes, we really like to support local small food producers and farms with the ingredients that we buy. And so a lot of the fruit that goes into our pies actually comes from farms and stands that are at CUESA's Ferry Building Farmers Market. So before we get started, I just want to say that I know that pie making can be a little scary. It's really unfortunate to spend all day making a pie and have it come out not the way that you want it to. So just know that I'm here for you and that as long as you move into pie making with a little bit of like patience and confidence, everything will turn out all right. Pies can smell fear, so you just have to make pie like you mean it. The first thing we're gonna do is we're gonna actually make our pie crust. And our pie crust really only has 3 ingredients in it: flour, butter, and this mysterious crust liquid, which has water, apple cider vinegar, sugar, and salt in it. The reason that those are all in there is to add flavor and to help us achieve the texture that we want from our pie crust. So the first thing to remember is that to always work with really cold ingredients because you want to preserve pockets of butter within your dough. And so the way that we do that is by starting with really cold butter. So the first thing we're going to do is just toss this together to make sure that all the butter gets coated. And then we're going to break up these chunks into smaller pieces. What's going to happen is once this looks ready-ish, the way that I can tell is when it doesn't look like just flour with chunks of butter in it anymore, it'll kind of become this like shaggy mixture. And that's when I'll know that I've incorporated the butter well enough. Okay, so now I have the texture that I want. It's really important that I use this cold butter, and I also use cold liquid. So when I make this, I put it in the fridge or the freezer until it's ready to use. One thing that's really important to remember is that each batch of pie crust and pie dough is different. So it's gonna want to take on a different amount of liquid until it's fully hydrated. When I make pie crust, I start with a larger amount of crust liquid and I add as I go until I feel like it's where I want it to be. So I'm gonna use my hand for this and I'm just gonna sort of add the liquid in and then toss around. So you can see it's really starting to come together. I don't have as many dry bits. And when I go like that, I pull away. I can feel a little bit of moisture on my hand, but it's not sticking. So if it's sticking to your hand, you may have gone too far. And it's really important to be careful with the liquid because you can always put more in, but you can't take it out. Okay, I think we're there, y'all. So here's what we're gonna do next. We're gonna move the stuff out of the way. And then we're just gonna dump this out onto the table. And I know that you're looking at that and you're like, that is not pie dough. And you're right, it's not yet. But pie dough really comes together on its own. And so if not working the dough too much and coldness are the other cardinal rules of pie crust making, rest is another. And I know that we all like to relax, and so pie crust is no different. So when you give dough time to rest, it will hydrate more thoroughly and consistently, and the water will kind of like spread out and like get all even. And that's when you're gonna get that pie crust. Okay, so here's what we're gonna do. We're gonna press this into a disc, and then I'm gonna wrap it in some plastic wrap. You could also use like a reusable Ziploc if you wanted to. In the fridge. This has now cooled, and I'm going to show you how we like to roll out our crust. So we're going to flour our surface, and the reason that we do that is so that we don't end up with our crust sticking to it, and then we're going to plunk it down right here. So the way I start is right here, and I'm going to put my rolling pin right across the center, and I'm gonna tip to one side, and I'm really only using this left hand to hold this rolling pin in place. And then with my right hand, I'm moving around. And then I'm gonna turn my dough 90 degrees and start again. So here and around. So now when I'm starting to get these like beveled edges here, I've kind of exhausted the usefulness of the shape of this rolling pin. And so now I'm just gonna start rolling out from the center. Like I said, rotating. So now we've gotten this rolled out to where we want it to be. I like it about between 2 and 3/8 of an inch thick. So the first thing that we're gonna do is we're gonna just cut off a little bit of excess around the edge of our pie tin so that we don't have all this extra pie dough that we're working with. We wanna save the excess of this because we're actually gonna use it later to put on top of our pie. So I like to leave at least an inch around the edge. And the reason is just that you wanna have enough to work with because the edge of this is gonna ultimately become your pie crust. So you don't want to get rid of it. So I know that a lot of people like to roll their pie crust around their rolling pin in order to get their pie into their tin. Actually, they just like to fold it like this. Assuming that it's properly floured, treat it gently because it is your baby. And unfold it here. You want to make sure that that corner tip is just like right in the center of your pie tin. And then bam, your pie crust is in there and it's centered, which is so nice because that means you don't have to move it anymore. So after this, we want to fit this crust into the pie tin, but we don't want to stretch it. So when I fit my crust into my pie tin, what I like to do is put my thumbs underneath the edges here and lift my dough up and then like lay it slowly and then use my other fingers to just sort of gently press it, not stretching it, onto the side of the pie tin. You want to have your dough contacting the edge of the pie tin because that's how you're going to get browning, right? The tin is the conduit for the heat. And then it's time to fill your pie. Now we're ready to fill our pie. You might notice that this isn't raw apples, and the reason for that is because we actually pre-cook our apple pie filling at Three Babes, and we have a couple reasons for doing that. One is that it helps us bake off a lot of the moisture that occurs naturally in the apples so that our pie doesn't end up too wet or too soupy, right? Which can give you kind of like a soggy crust, which no one wants. And then the other thing is that we just think it has like a nice texture when you bite into it. It's not too crisp and too chewy. It's not like a raw apple, and it's also not like applesauce, right? So we actually like to get them this nice floppy texture. The ingredients in our apple pie are obviously apples, right? We have butter because it's delicious and we want a little fat in there. Sugar to sweeten, flour to thicken, lemon juice to add a little bit of acidity, salt to just like bring out all these flavors, and then spices. All right, so now it's time to fill our pie. So I'm just gonna take this and pour it in here. And this might look like a lot, and it kind of is, but you really want a lot of fruit in your pie. We use, in like our berry pies, we use about 2 pounds of berries per pie. And then rather than starting from here, I really just want to press this all down so it's even. Shout out to my great grandmother for sewing this rag onto this apron. She's a genius and will be remembered for her sewing skills. Okay, great. Now our apples are in our pie. We're so close. Okay. Oh no, I did this wrong. Okay, don't do what I just did. Before you put your apples in your pie, you want to cut off your extra crust, which can still happen now, not to fear. See, like I said, there's nothing that can't be, you know, undone. And here's what we're gonna do. We're just gonna like cut off our excess crust. Ideally, you want the crust hanging sort of like halfway between the pie tin and your table, but it's really not the end of the world if it's not exactly even all around. And then, like I said, save this because that's good stuff. You can also, you know, like if you don't want to do a lattice on top of your pie, if you want to like put crumble on it or whatever, you can still save your excess and like make Pop-Tarts, make a galette, put some sugar on it and just eat it. Bake it first, but you know, I've never done that. So here's our lattice. So our lattice is this. All I did was repress it, chill it a little bit, and then roll it out and cut it into strips. The way that we lattice our pie is we're gonna start with one piece and we're gonna bring this piece of lattice all the way to the edge here and then lay it across the center. And then all the excess that we've got, I'm gonna rip off. And then we're gonna turn and do another piece. And then you might have noticed that we're out of lattice, which seems like a crisis, but it is not, because the lattice, remember, is gonna hide under here. So this is a secret, you guys, but many of the Three Babes pies will have a little thing here because we don't like to waste food. So I've made a zombie lattice, a Frankenstein lattice, and then I'm just gonna place that under there and bam, none the wiser. It looks exactly the same. It looks great. Okay, so all our fruit is covered and now the last thing to do is to create our crust. So you really want to get kind of a tight, we call it a rope here, that incorporates the edge of this lattice so that everything is holding together. And I remember when I started working at Three Babes and someone showed me how to do this and I was like, I'll never know how to do that. But you can do it. You can do it. We can all do it. So I use my left hand to just sort of hold and confirm what my right hand is doing. And I'm really just using these 3 fingers to pinch this dough into a roll and twist my wrist around. And then this left hand kind of follows and holds down what I've been doing. So we've gotten to the edge here, and then I like to unroll a little bit of the part that I did at the beginning and roll all of this in together into one thing. It's so beautiful. And then I just kind of like to tuck it in. Just a gentle little tucking in. So what I'm doing is I'm right-handed, so I'm gonna take the pointer and thumb of my non-dominant hand and rest it in between the crust and the lattice top. And then I'm gonna take my pointer finger of my right hand and stick it through here. And we're just gonna sort of pull these 2 things away from each other. You don't wanna pull too hard because your dough's gonna rip. And so I like to think of it as a gentle but firm suggestion about where the pie should go. Now the last thing to remember is, well, there's a couple things. One is you could take this pie right now and put it in the freezer and it will be totally fine and very delicious. And so like, if I have time to make a pie on Saturday, but I want to eat that pie on Wednesday or a month from now, you can make this, put it in something airtight so it doesn't get freezer burned, and walk away from it. If I were finishing this, I would put a little bit of cream. You can also use egg white, egg yolk, maybe a little sugar on top, whatever you wanted to do. But then this would go into the oven at 350 for 45 minutes, 180-degree turn, and then in for another 30. And what you're really looking for is for juice to sort of be bubbling out slowly, which means that the inside has thickened enough and that you're not going to get anything runny. You can find the recipe for this pie at CUESA's website. You can also ask questions in the comments if you have any pie struggles of your own, and we can answer them. Please remember that you can find Three Babes at the Ferry Building Farmers Market on Saturdays, and you can also find us at threebabesbakeshop.com. I hope that everyone is staying healthy and safe. Thank you all so much for watching. Happy baking.